What's up, everyone? I'm looking at my phone right now. It is Monday, May 18th. I was going to say May 28th. This is ClipperBlog Live. I'm your host, Andrew Hahn. Hey, what's up to me? My buddy, Lau Murray. We're hanging out in the lobby of the Clippers training facility because when's the next time we're going to be able to get to do this?
Might not be the draft. It might not be during free agency in July.
Might not be during free agency. There's no summer league in Vegas for the Clippers this year. They're only in Orlando.
Might not get any August trades.
No August trades.
Waiting on training camp in September.
And most importantly, there's no Western Conference Finals. There's no finals. Nothing.
No
season is over.
It's not happening.
So first things first. Let's wind down what happened first and second round. Well, you know what? First round seems like a game 6 and 7 flop.
3 consecutive double-digit Clippers losses. The first one you could sort of explain. You know, you got a team that just took a 3-1 lead, going back to Texas, feeling like, man, we got through game 7 in the San Antonio series. We had this lead. We got at least one. We got a game at home coming. They didn't show up for game 5.
No, they definitely had that look of just game 6 at home. We can wrap it up at home.
They looked ahead.
So let's just show up, and like if we get it, we get it. We don't, and we didn't. So let's just go home and take care of business. And that definitely had that attitude in game 5. Game 6.
Game 6. We were here Thursday. They had shoot around, and that's when we were talking about C averages and the team can play better, and they did. They played better. They made the adjustment to Josh Smith in the starting lineup. They absolutely had control of the game at a critical point, late third quarter. You're talking about a 19-point lead. James Harden's on the bench. Twitter was rolling. Kobe Bryant was giving Blake Griffin credit. It was almost as if we were going to be talking about a Western Conference Finals starting earlier. But
you know it's over when ESPN's Amino Hassan, who plays the Patino game anytime a team gets eliminated from the playoffs, and he's so rigid and not starting the game early, because maybe it keeps going, but with 2 minutes left in the third quarter, Clippers are up 19, and even he was starting to be like, oh, there's going to be a Rockets Patino game video coming out. It's going to. Even he thought it was done. Yeah. So it's over at that point, and Clippers end up losing by 12, I think. Game 6?
Yeah, they lost by 12, and the only reason they lost by 12 is because Chris hit the meaningless, three-pointer to end a drought where they missed 15 shots in a row. Game on the line, they missed 15 shots in a row, and it's not even the offense that was the big question here. Andrew, James Harden on the bench, and they gave up 40 fourth-quarter points.
It's Corey Brewer hadn't hit a shot in 2 months, I think. It was the 5th time in Josh Smith's career that he had a 50% or better three-point percentage while also taking 7 3-point attempts in a game. So it's stars align, things like that happen.
And the thing is, we knew that going into a game 7, they have a chance to win, obviously, but to lose like that, it's almost like when the San Antonio Spurs lost Game 6 in the 2013 NBA Finals.
Right.
You had it won, and you just are like, we have to go back into that building. You got to find a way to get it done.
It's so weird that the Clippers played every other day since, I want to say, April 17th. Since the playoffs started, they basically played every other day. And
Game 1 and 2 that was the only round ones.
So they had game 1 on that Sunday.
No, are you sure?
Okay.
That's an assist from Rowan Kavner.
Shout out to Rowan. So they had game 1 on the Sunday, had a couple days off. They lost the game 2.
Right.
And from then on, it was every other day they played.
And it was a team that needed rest desperately throughout the playoffs. Anytime in the first and second round, if they were able to get it between rounds, that would have been even better because then Chris would have had an extra couple of days.
Hey, this time they got 2 days off.
But this is what I'm saying. It's kind of weird that they get 2 days off because that's an extra day for them to sit there and think, wow, like what the heck happened in Game 6?
Right.
When really maybe the best thing for them would have just been get right back on the court and try and exercise those demons as quickly as possible.
Maybe they needed it back-to-back.
So it's pretty bizarre how like the team needed days off no matter what. Any way they get it, and then the time they actually get it, it's maybe didn't necessarily work to their advantage.
Yeah, I mean, bottom line is Game 7 arguably was the worst of the games that they played in this series when you consider they didn't lead at any point.
So let me ask you this. Season's done. Clippers overachieve, underachieve, met expectations. How do you feel about it?
If you're asking me that question, if you're going to frame it like that, I'm going to go with none of the above. Okay? None of the above, because I can't say that they overachieved. I think that, and I can't say they underachieved. I think that for me personally, I'm making an I statement. I expected 54 wins in the second round exit in October. That's, they won a couple more games. They didn't win their division, but they did get by. They get through to the second round. They didn't make it. Now, if you want to talk about meeting expectations, I don't think that you can say that they met expectations either. Even in this series, when they took the 3-1 lead, it's like, wow, we're going to get to the conference finals here. And now that they haven't, I don't think you can be satisfied with that.
Yeah. For me, I would say they underachieved my expectations despite the fact that they had a terrible, terrible bench. So last year they go out in the second round. This year they go out in the second round. It's minor, but it's a little bit different in my book because there was the Game 5 gap by Chris Paul in Oklahoma City where they had that game that essentially won, would have gone up 3-2 against Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City is, last season, was probably as good. Some people could say that they're potentially a little bit better than the Clippers. So it was a series the Clippers could have won, but not really a huge insult to say that you lost to the Oklahoma City Thunder at that full strength. This year, it's almost as if the Clippers lost like in a hard-fought Game 7 against the Spurs, everyone would say like, oh, okay, it's the Spurs and they did the Spurs thing, and there's no disrespect, there's no insult to losing to the Spurs. But man, I can't think of anyone that would say that the Rockets are decidedly better than the Clippers. And frankly, I think the vast majority of people would say that the Clippers were hands down better than the Rockets. I think the Rockets are going into the Western Conference Finals with a negative point differential, which is crazy because they just got blown out so many games, especially considering how they handled Dallas in the first round.
Yeah.
Dallas.
That was a 5-game series.
Yeah, Dallas is probably the weakest opponent of any Western Conference first round team, and that's considering like the Pelicans put up a big show against the Warriors that they ultimately lost. Portland, who had a ton of injuries to deal with, put up a decent show against Portland. Memphis.
Exactly. Right.
But yeah, the Houston Rockets, they got Dallas. Dallas wasn't very good, and the Clippers had the game won. It was over. Some stats prediction analysts say that it was like 99% done.
This is why you don't ever mess with. I swear those probability numbers only matter when someone blows it. I swear.
Yeah. I'm not big on superstitions or anything like that. So like people were tweeting that out or talking about it during the game. I remember distinctly, I think it was game 2 or game 5. Maybe it was game 5, Clippers against the Spurs. and I casually made the comment, you know what? Boris Diaw hasn't made a three-pointer this series, and he's been like terrible from the outside all series. And like Boris Diaw like makes like three three-pointers.
Shuts it down.
Yeah,
Josh Smith style.
And people are like, ha ha ha, it's so hilarious. Thanks because you jinxed it. Like if people tweeting
That was
at
game 5.
Yeah,
That was
that's game
definitely
5.
game 5.
If Twitter and superstitions had that kind of power, like we'd be tweeting louder numbers like crazy and like going to Vegas, things like that. But yeah, to me, the team underachieved. Before the season started, I thought it was Western Conference Finals minimum would meet expectations. They should have beaten the Rockets, and that's the disappointing thing. I guess the only silver lining you can take away from all of this is like there were some questionable front office decisions that were made this season for the Clippers, and losing, even though they're not necessarily directly related, it doesn't losing and not meeting expectations. It didn't matter how we kind of messed up some of the trades and decisions that were made in the year. You don't really get to say that if you lose the way that you did to the Houston Rockets.
And the biggest thing about that is, I think if you're going to criticize Doc Rivers, then what you want is for him to remain with the team, obviously, but you want him to feel a little bit of humility so that he can help make the team better. I think that's what a lot of people, maybe that's not a consensus, but I think in an idealistic world, you get to keep Doc and then say, Doc, help you, you know, help all of us. That's what happened. So you do not want the status quo going into next year. You basically are saying we need to look at the weaknesses on this team, and we need to do something a little bit more drastic than last year and a little bit smarter than last year. Maybe a lot more smarter, because last offseason is not exactly one that this front office can be proud of.
So let's like get right to the point. Two questions that everyone's asking for the Clippers now. Is this core good enough to win a title? Do you blow it up? I guess that's question one. And question two is, what do you do to fix it?
I think answering question number one, is the core good enough to win a title? You have to ask yourself, who is the core?
Okay.
We understand that Chris Paul was the catalyst for this change from being a lottery team to being a playoff team. He's part of your core. Blake Griffin was the #1 pick, absolutely energized this city when he made his on-court debut 5 years ago, and he's your most bankable player. He's definitely your, you know, he might be the best power forward in the league. He's part of your core. DeAndre Jordan, before Doc, he was pretty much crushed by Vinny. You would barely see 25 to 30 minutes per game. Now he plays more than any other center in the league. Total minutes per game. They rely on him maybe more than any other team relies on their center, at least on the defensive end. He's a free agent. Is he part of your core? Sounds like Doc absolutely wants him back, but you can say whatever you want. Money is going to talk, and DeAndre's decision is going to determine whether or not, you know.
Let's not put words in Doc's mouth or like what DeAndre's going to do. Like, we're not prognosticators. We're not.
We're just defining what the core is.
Well, so my question is, do you think DeAndre is part of the core?
I think he is, and I feel like you have a big three, and Chris and Blake are obviously 1 and 2. DeAndre is #3 because there is no other alternative here. Okay, both for DeAndre at his position and for players already on the roster. he's the only guy that fits into that big three. Okay. Now, are those guys good enough to win a title? Yeah, but, and it's that but, man, that makes the yes, the affirmative part questionable. I can't.
All right. To me, the core is Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, obviously, DeAndre Jordan.
And that's really it.
I'll put JJ Redick in that group too. Like JJ Redick defensively did a number on Harden. He's done a number on Harden.
Initially, I felt.
Yeah, he definitely wore down as the season went along. Or as the series went along. His offense, I think, is integral to the team. Just does so much stuff that is so complementary to what Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan do. And because of his contract amount, I know that Matt Barnes is 35 years old. I throw him in there with the core. He's not quote unquote untradeable, but you'd be hard pressed to get better value from what you're paying Matt Barnes now.
Right.
Like if someone, let's say hypothetically, Oklahoma City wants to trade Kevin Durant for Matt Barnes, and like somehow the contracts work, even though that's a completely impossible situation. Like, of course, you're going to make that deal. Yeah. But Matt Barnes, for considering all the factors, is definitely a part of the core. I think ideally for the Clippers, and this has been the case for a couple of seasons now, if you can find a wing that can push Matt Barnes to the bench, allow him to play fewer minutes, save his body a little more, go harder in the minutes that he does play. Like, that's halfway to solving the problems for the Clippers this year. I think unequivocally they're good enough. That core is good enough to win a title. I think the Clippers starters were one of the 2 or 3 best starting lineups in the entire league this season. And I was telling Law this when the end of season media availability happened. If you take Golden State's bench and replace the Clippers bench with it, do they win any fewer games? They probably win 67 games. They're on a historic pace as well. A bench is so important winning regular season games and saving your starters minutes in the regular season, and then allow them to really go at it hard in the postseason. Like that's the main difference here. It's the bench. It's not that big a deal.
Well, you mentioned that, and a guy that now we got to mention as far as talking about age is Jamal. Both of those guys, they turned 35 this year, and I think if you're looking at trying to make some moves or maybe redefining who your core is, ideally you would want Matt coming off the bench. That value increases obviously when he is in a role that he's played most of his career. This is the most starts by far that Matt Barnes has ever made in his career. He came through, but at the same time, you saw the difference in the small forward position between the last 2 teams that knocked the Clippers out of the playoffs. This year it was Trevor Ariza. And last year it was obviously the MVP of the NBA. I mean, you're not expecting to win that battle just in a vacuum, but what you are expecting to do is you're trying to give yourself options, and you're trying to see if you can defend the position, if you can get consistent performances. Matt, as great as he played this year beyond his means, you can't expect that going into next year. Same thing with Jamal. And you mentioned that you would do something with Jamal that would help improve the team next year.
Jamal has given great service to the Clippers in his tenure here. Moving forward, it's just not the ideal fit, especially with Austin Rivers on the roster. Now, I'm not saying
another free agent.
Austin Rivers is not nearly as good as Jamal Crawford, offensively speaking. Defensively, I know that Jamal's not good, and Austin's better. I don't think that is a huge disparity.
It's not significant right now.
Yeah.
Especially off the ball.
Pretty much Austin's biggest advantage over Jamal is that he's much younger. Like that's the key difference. I think Jamal can contribute to a contender. I think Jamal still has value in the league to certain teams.
Yeah.
It's just not an ideal fit with this team and the things that they're trying to accomplish, I think. So if it's me, then I'm looking for a way to get any kind of value in trading Jamal in the future. That's if it's me, but it's not. So
And for me, again, Jamal is one of my favorite players to watch. We're talking about a guy who, 35 years old. I believe it was amazing what he was doing until his calf injury. But the calf injury is what concerns me. It's what makes me think, have we seen the best of Jamal? Have we seen the best of guys like Matt Barnes? Hedo might retire. There's a lot of guys on this team who we can't say will be here next season. And then there's the value part of it. How do you improve on that?
On the plus side to all of this, it's not like the Clippers have a bunch of small contracts that they can't get rid of that are taking up roster spots. Spencer Hodges and Jamal are the only players on the bench, I believe, that have guaranteed deals moving forward, and Jamal is only partially guaranteed. So if you can find the talent, if you can find like the bargain bin guys, or the guys in the D League, or the guys that go undrafted that can somehow contribute and work their way into the rotation, they have the space for it. It's not like they have bodies clogging up positions ahead of them.
Well, and the other key, as far as guys on the bench, and CJ was last year's first round pick. He was on the roster the entire season.
I warmed up to him, by the way. Like,
yeah, I mean, he's 6'5". He's got a good wingspan. We know that he can shoot. He has a profile of a shooter and a bigger body guy who would eventually have to play his way into the rotation. This is an Austin Rivers situation where Austin only turns 23 in August. CJ is older. He's going to be 25 in December. He's not a guy who can say, 2 years and wait. Reggie Bullock got a year and a half, and then he was gone.
I think when the Clippers first drafted Reggie Bullock, Fred Katz and I were like really high on Reggie Bullock. It was like
yeah, you guys were
three wings that were all in that group. It was Tony Snell, it was Reggie Bullock, and it was Tim Hardaway Jr. And I think I personally like Reggie Bullock of the three. I think Fred also liked Reggie Bullock of the three because as far as like the shooting guard wing goes, he had a reasonable enough three-point shooting stroke in college that he exhibited. He had enough size that it looked like he could be almost an immediately contributing 3-and-D wing. And then when they drafted CJ Wilcox, I was much lower on Wilcox because, like you said, he was an upperclassman. He was an older guy. He was not much of a defender. But after watching the two of them kind of like shoot around in practice and 1 before games, obviously Bullock is gone now. I prefer Wilcox to Bullock. So,
yeah, he is the diamond in the rough that needs to emerge. And as a point that we haven't made yet on this show, Clippers currently don't have a draft pick, first or second round. I would say that it would behoove the Clippers to consider buying at least a second round pick because if we're talking about bargain basement guys, we can't just talk about veterans. We got to figure out, look at Jordan Clarkson, for instance. LA Lakers have a first team all rookie, and he was mid-40s, mid-40s draft pick.
I mean, there's like I think something to be said about having a roster bad enough that's going to allow a second round pick or a guy that goes undrafted to get that many minutes to kind of find its flow that quickly. So that situation.
Take it with a grain of salt, in other words. Right. We are talking about this year's draft class and this year's performance of guys. We're not saying, hey, look, you got to find a guy who's going to make an all-rookie team. But we are saying just, take your chances.
Right.
Clippers don't have a lot of them to play with.
Right. This is where someone that is really knowledgeable about the draft class would come in handy because I haven't watched much college basketball. I don't think you watched a ton of college basketball. So we're not super versed on the second round and the bottom half of guys that are going to be drafted.
And there are surprises every year.
Right. Well, so the question is basically like the Clippers should buy a second round draft pick. They should buy a second round draft pick if there's a guy that they really want. If there is not a lot of difference between a second round guy and an undrafted guy this year, then there's no reason to buy a second round pick.
Absolutely.
Other than just like public relations, like look, we bought a second round pick. But that's not necessarily smart GMing.
And again, as far as benefit of the doubt, let's just be real. I don't think anybody in the Clippers front office is going to get that from this year's draft anyway. So
Let's take a couple of questions here. Patrick James, fellow Clipper blogger, has a quick question that came in. Said Reddick, Crawford, and Barnes shot a combined 28 for 100 in the final 3 games. Is that the difference in the series?
Yes.
All right.
I absolutely think it was, because in game 1, you know, we talked about how great Matt Barnes was, Jamal Crawford was. In game 3, everyone was talking about Austin. I mean, the leading scorer was JJ. When JJ was here Thursday, he talked about his off-shooting game in game 5, said it was an anomaly. Turned out that it wasn't. And they needed the offense. They needed the boost because neither one of these teams consistently stopped the other in this series. The fact that guys who played so well during this year, who shot the ball well earlier in the postseason, just didn't have it for 3 straight games. That did it right there for me.
So for JJ, I'm going to give you 2 choices. You can pick one or the other. You can't say a little bit of both.
I won't play around with you. I will be definitive.
Did he wear down?
JJ Redick wore down.
All right.
He
I
wore
think that's
down.
fair. I think that's more than fair. You're guarding. I think was Harden narrowly lost his scoring title to Westbrook this year.
Narrowly, but look, James Harden was the only guy to score 2,000 points this year. So I would have given it to James just for the total.
Like if Redick is guarding basically the best or second best scorer in the league this season, and not only that, Harden is such a difficult cover because he's so crafty in the way that he gets around the board,
and he's physical.
right?
You know, he's looking to get that contact. Okay?
It's something that that is going to wear down on you. See another question here. Idea 86 says Gerald Green, Tibbs on the coaching staff.
Gerald Green.
Gerald Green, yeah. These questions about players that the Clippers can use.
Well, I will say, if you lose Jamal, I think Gerald Green, he helps in 2 ways. Number 1, Gerald can get hot. So, you know, you're talking about streak shooting. Gerald is one of those guys who he can literally go from one bad quarter to a great quarter. You're talking about a player who can go from one good season to a season that's not as good. So the biggest thing with Gerald Green, Doc knows him. So all you people who believe that Doc should not have guys that he coached before on his roster, there you go. You got another thing to talk about. But I think I'd be interested to see Gerald Green on this team simply for the fact that he's an athlete. This is the Clippers. We talk about Lob City all the time. Chris has not had an athletic wing in his 4 seasons here. He hasn't. Who's the most athletic wing that the Clippers have had in his time here?
Matt Barnes 2 years ago. Unless we're including Eric Bledsoe as a wing.
No, I don't think we are. I don't think we are. Eric's a guard, you know.
Matt Barnes 2 years ago.
Not that Gerald isn't a guard, but I'd love to see what would happen if you had a perimeter defender who could fill the lane and add another element to the Clippers transition game, especially if they're trying to play with more pace.
Right.
I think it's an interesting. Thank you for bringing that up. I think that one's interesting.
We've overstayed our welcome, but last question before we take off. Law, Clippers, better or worse next year versus this year?
That's one I don't want to answer.
All right. For La Murray, I'm Andrew Hahn. That's going to do it for ClipperBlog Live today. Thanks for tuning in, guys.